Hi, everybody. It's Kathy Opperman, and we're here at R3 Wellness Center in Collegeville for our weekly discussion group. And we are here with one of the leaders of our group, and this week it is Louis Mandrak. So welcome, Lou.
Thank you.
And tonight's topic is going to be very interesting considering what is going on in the world. And it's going to be interesting to help you with understanding conflict, not only as it occurs out in the world, but as it occurs within ourselves. Is that a pretty good synopsis of what we're going to talk about
within
tonight?
ourselves and between us and other people, and how to resolve it and how to even stop it before it gets out of hand.
Okay, we know
between us and others.
We've got a lot of that going on right now.
Yes.
And it's very frustrating. It's very sad for us to watch, and hoping that you can kind of help us with that tonight.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll be a fascinating discussion. So, really, the question is, why do you think people go to war? I mean, everybody. There's very few wars that the invitation is not taken up on. So, why do you think people go to war?
They don't agree on something.
Okay. So
sometimes it's like they want something that someone else has that they can't have.
Right.
They don't agree.
That's pretty much it. There's usually a difference of opinion, and it comes to blows, so to speak. So if everybody knows about the brutality of war, why do so many people participate in it? What is the individual's payoff of jumping into war and signing up for war?
They feel they're protecting somebody. So either their rights or somebody else's rights of freedom.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Freedom, sometimes survival, sometimes sometimes it's greed on one side. And so history shows us that there's numerous examples of invading armies, war and death and so forth, subjugation. But there's one encounter that stands out amongst all of them as an outlier. And that's one that comes to mind readily is in India, and when they had peacefully parted ways with their country, England, that had subjugated them and was empowered over top of them. So, of course, everybody remembers that would be Mahatma Gandhi, who had led that movement. So, what was the difference there? That was not an out-and-out war between India and England, but it was done relatively peacefully. So what do you think happened?
I guess it was the leadership.
Leadership, okay. That's good.
What else? The people, maybe their mission, their understanding of what they needed.
Okay.
Their ability to convey it, communication.
Communication was a part of it, right? Okay. That's good. That was a lot of the difference. It was one man sharing his vision. So what happened physically is he had asked England to leave, and as a lot of Indians had asked England to leave, and then they started peaceful protests, marches, and work slowdowns, etc. So a lot of that became physical manifestations. And it started with one person and moved to many. Now, how's that different from all the other conflicts where people are warring to try and beat the other person? Why do you think this is different?
I guess they didn't send troops in. They didn't go in with guns and right. That conflict.
Right. So the Indians did meet up with each of the English occupying factions around the country with arms. Okay. So why haven't others chosen to do the same thing to solve their?
I'd like to know. I think we'd all like to know that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I think we should. So let's look at that same concept, the same example, from another perspective now. Look at internally what happened to Gandhi, and why was he different and able to lead a country in this way? What do you think was different about Gandhi?
I think he probably operated from the concept of we are all one, and maybe that we just needed to work more together than to see everyone as an enemy or anyone as an enemy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He did see the world differently. He saw everyone as one as part of the whole. What else is different about Gandhi, you think, individually as the man?
he was very inspirational.
Mhm. Yeah,
He was
definitely.
people were able to follow him. I don't know what else, too much else.
I think one of the things that sticks out to me is that he knew himself.
Okay.
He knew himself internally. He knew who he was. So he was very in touch with himself. Um, and when we do that, we have a lot of internal power, a lot of strength. We get to tap into that core strength. And if you think about one man trying to stand up and lead a nation, any man who stands up, any woman who stands up and leads a large group, like a nation, especially a nation of that size. But even within your own groups, at home or at work, when you try to stand up and be that leader, you have to tap into that inner strength. And it helps when you know who you are. If you try to be someone that you're not, if you try and be a leader when you're doubting your own ability to be that leader, then it shows quickly, and you lose your self-confidence. Does that make sense?
Right. And how do we find out who we are? Like, how does somebody do that? I think that's where a lot of people struggle. They don't remember who they are. They don't remember who they're not really supposed to be. It's not like saying you forgot who you're supposed to be. That's not it either. Like, what does that mean to know who you are? When somebody knows who they are, describe that kind of person. Is that like somebody who's confident? Like, what do they? Someone who knows who they are. If you had to profile them, how would you describe them?
Well, I think, like you said, self-confidence is an aspect or a characteristic of someone who knows what they are, but that's not how someone becomes self-knowing. Okay. It starts the other way around, where once you get to know yourself, and I'll explain how. Once you know yourself and you know who you are, then from there springs forth the attributes like self-confidence, inner strength, knowing your own power, knowing your limitations. But I think to find out who you are, that takes a lot of inner work, a lot of self-examination, and looking in the mirror and really questioning who you are and what are you here for, and what makes you happy and what doesn't, and are you going after those things that are most important to you versus going after things that you're doing because someone else thinks you should, or are you, still playing tapes in your head from what others said you should be doing or shouldn't be doing, that type of thing. A lot of it is through, in Gandhi's particular situation, he did a lot of meditating. So that's obviously one easy way to work at it. Not everybody meditates, not everybody knows how to or wants to. Some I've heard talk about just sitting quiet and thinking and introspection and looking at who they are that way. And that doesn't have to require meditation. It could just be a quiet moment, maybe quiet time, drive time, and thinking about what it is that you're doing with your life, who you are, why are you doing what you're doing, and that really self-examination. Ask yourself the hard questions. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Is this for me, or is this to please somebody else? And that starts the questions to be asked all the time, or more frequently, I should say, so that when you are doing something, ask yourself, who am I doing this for? Is it for me or for someone else? And then once you start realizing the true answer of, wow, I'm really doing this for somebody else, what's my payoff? What do I get out of it? Is it worth it to me? Then you start honing in on what makes me happy, what makes my life worth living, and then you start doing more of what makes you happy, and you'll find the more you do that pleases you and is true to who you are, the better you get at that. And
but we're taught not to be, we're not to be conceited, we're not to be selfish. So
Mhm.
is it, how do you have that balance? So it's not all about you being happy and you go around, I feel happy, I feel good. You hurt other people or you do things that are not in someone else's best interest, but they're in your interest. So there's a balance there, though, isn't there?
Yes, and one of the balances could be in knowing that you are one with all. So if I am one with everyone else, when I look at what is good for me, then usually that's good for others. If I'm doing something because somebody else wants me to do it and I'm trying to please them, but I'm not happy, do I send out the resonance of discontent? Do I end up sending out a signal to others like don't bother me now because I'm not happy? And then how is that helping others? How is that making others' lives better? So if I'm doing something that I enjoy, something that I gravitate to, then I'm happy about it. I'm more inclusive of others and wanting to share that happiness with others. So now I send out the vibration of joy, and then that makes others around me happier.
And it comes back to
and
you.
it comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, giving is a big part of knowing who you are and being happier. A lot of people feel the more they give out to others of themselves, the happier they are. And that in turn comes back to you and it becomes a self-fulfilling, or I should say, like a kind of an escalating joy. Because the more you give, the happier you are giving, and the happier others are receiving, and give in turn, and so forth. So it's all about self-love in the sense of selfishness, but self-love in the sense of I'm doing what I enjoy doing, and I'm now happy to share that with everyone else.
Got it. Okay. Got it. That makes sense.
And that brings us back to Gandhi. Him knowing who he was able to tap into that self. And we've probably seen a lot of examples in our own lives and perhaps even in our own personal situations where we tried to be something we're not, and we failed at it. And it might just be in the moment trying to pretend we're someone else and immediately getting that reaction from others, saying that they're questioning on their face, like, who are you right now?
Mm-hmm.
And it shows very quickly then, okay, I tried to be something I'm not, and it immediately showed back that the others saw right through it, and so forth. So those are some of the things you want to understand about personally. We're looking to understand better who we are. And so Gandhi was in touch with who he was, and a couple of ways that I had mentioned, through meditation mostly, but we can do it just through quiet time and asking ourselves the hard questions. Once you get yourself more centered, and I was just talking to somebody today who said they wanted to do something that made them happy and more centering, help themselves get more centered, because with all the work going on that they were getting pulled in a number of different directions, and it was making them focus outside of themselves all the time. And then there goes down your joy level, and then with the people around you that are close to you, they don't get that joy with you. They get discontent. You're upset about things at work or what have you, and then that passes on. That ripple effect goes on.
Negatively.
Yes, negatively.
And then it comes back to you negatively, because if you're putting out that you're not happy, then it's probably going to come back.
Exactly. Yes, it ripples back. And if you watch ripples in a pond, when you drop a pebble in, it does ripple out, and then it hits the edge of the pond, and then it comes back again from all directions. So, very good analogy. So then the question is, do we, if you think about others that are like that, some people that rose to the level of national or international prestige based on knowing who they are and then leading others. You can think of Martin Luther King, Mandela. These were people that really were in touch with themselves and lived their beliefs, and they were so true to themselves, and others gravitated to them. They became like the flame that the moths come to, and everyone was just attracted to them. So then the question is, do we have that capability? And not necessarily do we have the capability of rising to international or national fame, but just do we have the capability of knowing who we are and living our own truths? So what do you think? Does everyone have that capability? Do you?
As an individual or as a nation, are you saying?
Individually.
I think we're all capable. I don't think we all know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Live our truths and feel free, and that's, I think, where people struggle.
Yeah, I agree. Why do you think it sounds like an easy concept?
Mm-hmm.
So what goes in the way of that? What comes in our way of knowing who we are and living our truths?
I think some people are afraid to fail.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even want to try.
Mm-hmm.
They're more comfortable not doing the work that may be needed.
Right.
Complacency, laziness. They don't want to work that hard.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to change the world.
Right.
Other people.
Right.
And hence leads to conflict, leads to war. And here we go when we get into these situations.
So so taking the national and international movement out of the picture, what do you think would stop someone from knowing who they are to just live their own lives better, live their own lives truer to who they are? And it doesn't have to do with leading groups or leading nations or anything like that.
Well, I think they first have to discover who they're not. Some people don't know who they are until
Mm-hmm.
they realize who they're not or who they don't want to be.
Right.
And I don't think many people are ready for that change of themselves until they're ready. Mm-hmm. Until something happens and they just sit there and say, I'm not happy. Mm-hmm. And then somebody has to come along to help them if they haven't had the building blocks, mm-hmm. in their life to always live that way. Right. Would you say that it's not everybody's thinking I want to be happy, I want to do this. They're just going along in their day and they're not even focused on it. So I guess the first thing is focus and awareness. Right. That you want to be different or do something or understand that we're all one, and maybe not to have that conflict so easily with other people. Mm-hmm. Pull back. But we're just so used to this drama world, and the media doesn't help with that. Right. And every day something's happening and you kind of get caught up in it. Sure. Life. Yes. You don't step back and say, maybe I can change something. Maybe I can do something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Life happens a lot.
Yeah, every moment.
Every moment. So as life happens, there's so many things that draw us in. There's so many things that are vying for our attention, whether it's other people or televisions or magazines or games or what have you, work. They're all looking for our attention. And so it's easier to focus outside of yourself. You hear sometimes people say that it's easier to help other people's problems than to focus on our own, and or easier to try and fix somebody else's problems than to fix our own. So one of the things then, for anyone who's watching this, they're probably already interested in helping themselves, focusing on themselves. And that's how you get better at helping others then, is knowing better who you are. So, I think everything you were saying is exactly right. Be aware that, number one, you want to focus more on who you are, and then start asking yourself the hard questions. Start looking inward, sit quietly, meditate, how to work or drawn to it. If you're not drawn to meditation, just, again, asking yourself the hard questions of, what is important in my life? What would make me happiest? And write some of these things down for yourself, and see what would make me happiest if I was doing this or that. How could I pursue that? And how can I do that while still doing what I'm doing, so that I'm not dropping everything and running to something, especially if you're looking for a career change, it'd be difficult to drop the income you have to do something else.
I think the one task when people struggle with that you've taught us here is to, again, People say, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want. Say, well, tell me what you don't want. What are you not happy about? What doesn't work for you? Because when you can look at what doesn't work, then the flip side becomes what you want.
Right.
For yourself.
Exactly.
And in your life. So when you write down what you don't want, it's easier to figure out what you do want.
Yes. It's a matter of narrowing it down. As one door closes, another one opens. So as you close all these doors here, you start realizing, wow, this is what I've always enjoyed doing, and I've enjoyed doing this on occasion, or when this happened. What if I was to do that more often? How would that look? How would life be?
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at energetically in India what happened. So thoughts, and this is where I find it very interesting, is when you look at the energy patterns of what was going on there. So energetically, you look at a lot of people were thinking about independence, and they were thinking about peace, and they were thinking about being on their own and making their own decisions, living who they are as a nation, not just individually. Everybody individually was living who they were, even though they were subjugated. But as a national thought of living who we are, you start getting all these individual thoughts coming together. And thoughts follow the law of attraction. And the law of attraction says like energies attract, basically. So if a thought comes of independence, another thought about independence comes and starts to multiply. So you have one individual thinking about independence, you have another one that independently thinking about independence, and you start getting enough people thinking about independence, they start talking about it amongst themselves. And so you go from thought, word, to deed, which is the invocation of energy coming from spirit into the physical world. And then you get enough people talking about thought word, doing this thought word deed, creating this manifestation of the thought independence. And if you were to create on a, let me see if I can do this on a piece of paper here. If you had a chart of, let's see, energy on the high side and time or frequency on the bottom, then you would see this. Okay, you would see. I don't know if this will show here on the camera.
Hold it up that way.
On the camera here. Okay, so if you had time, what do we got here? Energy on this side, and you had frequency or the time on the bottom here. You'll notice what happens is you start down here where you have a few people thinking independence, and then you have more people thinking independence, and until you get to a point where it spikes. And that spike is the physical manifestation of an individual who embodies the thought patterns of the group.
A physical manifestation, or is it a spiritual manifestation? Because it seems to me that that's more, if everybody's thinking of independence, that's not them physically doing something. Are you saying the thought is the physical part?
It's graduated.
Okay.
So, and you're on the track.
Okay.
It's both, actually. It's spirit physically manifesting. So spirit is coming into each individual saying, you can be who you are. You can create this. You can manifest this. And so you have enough of these individuals' spirits, their souls, saying to them and getting through to their consciousness, this is who you are. Work towards this. Think about it. Discuss it. And then you get to a point where it physically manifests into an individual who moves forward in the public eye and says, I will be the leader or the group leader to help bring forth this group thought into physical manifestation.
So you said the soul gets through to our consciousness.
Yes.
That's a pretty powerful statement.
Yes.
So our soul gets through to our consciousness. So are you saying that our soul knows who we are?
Yes.
And who we're supposed to be?
Yes.
Which is a being that is love, that understands that we are all one, that is kind, that is loving, that is gentle.
Yes.
That's who we truly are.
Yes.
And so is it then through our lives that the soul, how does it get through to our consciousness? The here and now, the person that's here, how does it do that? I know that a tool to use when we're ready would be to meditate or just be and trust and allow and say, I've got an issue, I'm not feeling right, and just be. And is that when the soul's trying to affect our consciousness, when we're just being quiet, meditating? How does it get through?
Well, the soul is always communicating with us. And similarly, our angels, our guides, are always communicating with us. And a lot of people will say God is always speaking to us in the silence. And that's really where a lot of it happens, or I should say not that it happens, but that it's easiest to hear is in the silence. And that's what we talk about sitting quietly or meditating, because then it's easiest to hear our soul or our angel guide, our angels or our guardian angel or our guides. And but think about it as that quiet whisper you hear when you come up with a good idea of, oh, I should send so and so a birthday card, or I would like to visit so and so or call them because I haven't talked to them in a while. So you get those little whispers, those little thought ideas that come to you that are loving, that are kind, that are forgiving, all those positive love attributes. That's part of you, that's your soul, that's your angels talking to you and saying, here's a loving thought, something to do, something to be. And it really stems from your being. Your doing always stems from your being. And so the same thing goes with what we were just talking about. Your soul is your higher self, knows who you are, and is trying to come through your consciousness, connect with your consciousness, because your consciousness is a free entity that is a part of your triune being. We call it triune being because there's three parts to you. There's the mind, body, and spirit. Okay, so your mind is part of that triune being. Each one has its own independence. Each one has its free will. So your mind has its free will to do what it wants. Your spirit has free will to decide as you as a whole to do something or be something, and trying to, in this incarnated body in this world, be forgiving, for example. Maybe you came into this life to learn really and to experience fully how to be forgiving or how to be loving, along with many other things, but maybe that's one of the overarching things you came to learn. So it's always trying to remind you, be kind, be loving, be helpful, those type of things. And so the spirit is trying to talk to you and get through. And when I was mentioning earlier, when we were talking about earlier about how life happens and how we get all of these things and people and televisions and whatnot vying for our attention, it's easier to not listen to that little voice and instead to watch a TV show or to read a magazine or do work or something of that nature.
Soul, is that God? Those of us who are Christians believe, Jesus is inside all of us, God is inside all of us. Is that the same thing as the soul, or two different things? Or is it all depending on your belief?
Well, your belief certainly attracts who you're talking with. So if, for Christians, they would believe, and believe in Jesus and would attract Jesus' conversation. And if you're of another religion, then you would attract the conversation of the consciousness of another entity who would want to help you. Because all of these beings are divine, they're loving, they're giving, and they want nothing more than to help and to nourish and to support us. So they give us the free will to believe in any religion or any belief system that we resonate with at that time. And sometimes that'll change throughout your life. Your belief systems will change, your religious beliefs will change. And so at each time that it changes, those who are on the other side that that resonate with that belief system will come and support you and help you with whatever it is. They're always trying to get you to the next level of belief that's closer to the, more true, we'll say, because there's truths and there's levels of truth. It depends on what you believe is true, and then there's the ultimate truth, we could call that. So they're always trying to help us, support us, get better and stronger and happier and more joyful.
So for some people, that's just God. That's the only person they pray for.
Yes.
Other people believe in that angels are there to help them. Other people believe that there are spirit guides that help them. Others believe our loved ones are who are on the other side in heaven help us, that we pray to them and they help us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all depends. When you're saying the free will, that's what we know God gave us. The free will, believe what it is you want, but ultimately it should all stem from good. We should be doing good if we're listening and paying attention and connected to the divine, whatever that is for each person. Pretty good synopsis.
Yes, I like that.
And if we would get that, there would be no war. There would be all peace, right?
That's right. We are fully connected with who we are.
And who we are is a spiritual being.
Spiritual being. And there are those that believe that we are human beings having a spiritual experience on occasion, and there are those who believe we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Either way.
Did you say the same thing twice? Did you say the same thing twice, or was it backwards?
Okay, it was backwards. So some believe that we are humans. Maybe I did say the same thing twice. Sorry,
okay.
If anybody places this on reading. Some believe that we are humans having a spiritual experience, and some believe we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So either way, if you are more grounded and centered with who you are and in touch with that loving and giving self, there would be no war, there would be no conflict, certainly fewer conflicts, even personal conflicts, which is going to be the next part of our discussion.
We're ready to move to that if you're
ready. Oh, yeah.
How to solve personal conflict. So
this is the, so I really like that explanation of the energy picking up and building on itself to creating a physical manifestation of one person stepping forward. And we've seen that happen on both good and bad sides, where we've seen that happen throughout our history.
With leaders, you mean?
With leaders, yes. Good leaders, bad leaders, yes. The same energy level happens, I should say the same energy pattern happens. So this is the same energetic pattern that we've seen for any like radical movement or quick thing that kind of stepped out onto the international stage or even the local stage. So how does this affect us? How does this relate to us personally? What happens personally is the same pattern applies. So we find ourselves in a situation, we find ourselves in a conflict. So there's two opposing thoughts, me and another person, and we're seeing the opposite sides of the same coin. And that's all we're arguing about at this point. So typically what happens is one person will say or do something, and then the other person reacts. Does that sound like a normal conflict situation? Okay. The other person that reacts to then reacts to our reaction, and then it escalates from there. Does that sound normal? Okay, that's a normal pattern. So, and then eventually it ends, and we both leave worse for the wear, or maybe one of us leaves worse and the other one leaves feeling superior. But we're both a little stressed, maybe hurt a little bit. So, what happened internally? Do you think you can put into words what was going on there internally, like within the person's mind?
Which person?
Either one, because it's going to be the same effect both sides.
When they're mentally arguing, or when they're physically arguing, you're saying?
Yeah,
in a conflict?
If two people are arguing and they're in conflict with each other, what do you think is going on mentally?
Somebody wants to win. They want to convince the other person. They want to be right.
Yeah.
Prove the other person wrong.
Oh, who doesn't like to be right? We all like to be right.
I'm only wrong twice a year, and I think I used that up already.
Okay. So we all like to be right.
Yeah.
So each one's trying to prove they're right. Okay. What drives that? What is so important about being right?
Your belief system. you believe you should be right. It's, you're wrong, I'm right. That's what I believe. So that goes way back to what we've been taught,
Mm-hmm.
what we may have studied, what our parents have told us, our teachers have told us,
Mm-hmm.
and just like the wars, they're operating with a whole different, rule of a Bible per se. Their Bible
Mm-hmm.
tells them to kill. Our
Mm-hmm.
Bible tells us to love. So it's all in what their belief systems are as to what makes somebody feel that they're right.
There's right. So we're all looking at to see if that to show others we're right, and I think a lot of that has to do with the ego taking over, and kind of negating what we just talked about with the loving part and the forgiving part, and now we're more in the portion of ourselves in charge and saying, well, no, the I, the ego is who I am, and therefore, if somebody's saying I'm wrong, they're negating who I am. They're trying to tell me I'm not who I say I am, and that goes against the core of who we are in that momentary belief. When it's really not the core of who we are, it's really the ego standing out in front of us saying, no, this is who I am.
And is it the ego who is the one who gets hurt? So if you start feeling that you're hurt, and they're hurting me, and they're taking advantage of me, and all that, that's ego talking, right?
Right, exactly.
And the spirit would be saying, tell me if I'm wrong, but the spirit would be saying, why is this person reacting? Let me understand this person first. Where are they coming from? Are their feelings hurt? But we don't go there naturally. That's not where we go. We don't step back and say, oh, I wonder why they're thinking that way. Well, what could I do to make them happy? You're like, they're attacking me. They're attacking me mentally. Some people get attacked, mental abuse. They get attacked physically. And it's a little hard to connect into that spiritual love, everybody.
Right, yes. Yes, in the moment, we're feeling attacked. And our instant reaction is defense, which is then to attack back. And the best defense is an offense. So really, it looks like you can say that every attack is a response. So even if someone attacked me out of the blue, where did that come from? Because if I didn't invoke I didn't attack that person, I didn't invoke a response, I'm just standing there, all of a sudden they blurt out something that attacks me verbally. Where do you think that came from?
It had to come from somewhere. It had to come from me. Or something.
Right.
Something upset them.
Exactly. Something upset them.
You're saying every attack, if somebody's even picking on you about something,
yes,
it's because something happened to them first.
Exactly.
Or they perceive something happened to them first.
Exactly, yes. Both those things could have happened. Okay. They could have perceived an attack. So maybe you were looking curiously, and they perceive that look as something else. Maybe you just looked at them, by standing across the room, and they perceive that. Maybe you didn't look at them, but something about who you are reminds them of something else that happened to them by someone with that type of personality. And there's a million possible reasons that it could have triggered something in them. When you see, you read on the news how somebody gets attacked out of the blue by walking down the street. Again, it may have nothing to do with who that person was walking or what they did to anyone, but it speaks solely about the attacker, what was going on in their mind and what was happening, what happened to them in the past, that they feel the need to attack someone else. So every attack is a response or is a defensive action, like an offensive action to something that they're trying to defend themselves against, or trying to prove to themselves that they are not victims. Maybe they were a victim in the past, and now they're trying not to be that victim. And the only way in their mind in the moment to not be a victim is to be the attacker. And you see that happening with abuse that sometimes gets passed on in generations.
That's a pretty powerful statement too. The only way to not be a victim is to choose to be the attacker.
Yes,
Because
that's
that you protect yourself that way then.
exactly
So that you don't become the victim.
Exactly.
Is that what war is?
Well, war is usually started by a couple, like one individual or a couple individuals. There's usually one person that tends to be leading the charge, so to speak. And so a lot of it has to go back to their psyche as to why, if they have a choice, and in their mind they don't have a choice. So, but why, if everyone else looking at it from the outside says, yes, you do have a choice, why are they seeing no other choices? Then it goes back to their makeup, right? Their beliefs, who they are. And it always speaks more to, and you can see that, you can say that to yourself. One of the defense mechanisms you can create is, if somebody is attacking you verbally, you could say to yourself in the moment, all right, before I react, let me just remind myself, everything that that person said or did is defining who they are, not defining who I am. And when you look at it you just take that one event and you look at it from a slightly different angle. You just twist that event and look at it from a different angle and say, you know what, I didn't deserve that. I'm not who that person says I am. And and they're defining themselves in that moment. They're not defining who I am, because I know who I am. Now all of a sudden you didn't react. You're acting based on new information of who that person is showing themselves to be, and it's choice at that point. So you're consciously choosing to create that moment of who you are, and in that moment you're creating yourself as not someone who reacts to that situation.
So we're talking about, now we're in a conflict. Say it's somebody at work.
Okay.
Let's bring it to the real world.
Right.
And they're on your back about something.
Mm-hmm.
And you had no idea what's going on. So how you're supposed to say that, before I react, I'm going to remind myself that it's about them, it's not about me.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things you can do.
But it's not. But it is about me if they're picking on me about something.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to say I did something wrong.
Sure.
But why are they? They're doing that because of a power thing. They're doing that when you say everything they are is defining everything that they something or is defining who they are. What does that mean in that kind of situation?
Well, it's still the same definition applies, that they're defining who they are. So they're saying to the world right now, in this moment, I'm someone who is attacking someone, when I could just as easily talk to that person in a professional tone, or I could talk to that person in an understanding tone. But no, I'm choosing to, probably because their emotions are getting the best of them, and probably because they've been trained, so to speak, conditioned, as we all are conditioned, to react to certain situations, and in that moment, that person is doing the same thing. They're conditioned to act a certain way in that situation, based on their life experience, that they feel that's the best way to handle that situation. So when I say, take a moment to step back and think about it before you react, and consciously choose, you're number one, you're de-escalating immediately the situation. So before we said, okay, the normal situation of conflict says there's an action, there's a reaction, and then there's a reaction to reaction, and so forth, and it escalates, and that's whether it's personal conflict or international. So if I choose not to react to that person, automatically I disengaged momentarily enough to give me some time to think, and I de-escalated that situation, and instead of escalating it. And that's really where you want to be right now. Now you're in control of the situation, even though this person might still continue to ramble on or be in attack mode. You don't have to react and escalate it and create a worse situation, where now you're involving others to come in, or you're embarrassing yourself, or getting yourself in trouble with possibly having disciplinary action, et cetera, at work. So now you have time to think, and you say, how can I keep this at a lower level vibration, a lower energy a disengaged conflict where we just talk professionally. And there's a number of things that you can do then. And, you know, but it all comes based out of who you are, knowing who you are. So you won't be doing those things if that's not who you are. If you are someone who instantly reacts, you know, hyper emotional, you're going to do based on who you are.
Well, that is what feels normal to you. That doesn't mean we can't change it.
Exactly. By getting to know yourself a little better, by being, you know, as we talked about earlier, quiet time or meditating and asking yourself the questions, what's more important to me? So that in that type of situation, had you asked yourself earlier, what's more important to me, being right or being loved, which is what it says in Course in Miracles, I can choose to be right or I can choose love. So if I choose to be right, the first thing I'm going to do is come back and with equal emotional energy output, I'm going to say why that person's wrong and why I'm right, and start really escalating the problem. If I choose love, then I can take a moment and then say, okay, why don't we take a moment to talk about this? Can we go into a private office? Or, you know what, let me get back to you in about 3 minutes, and we will talk all about this. And just give yourself 3 minutes to, and the other person equally as much, that time to bring their energy level down. Whether or not they choose to bring their energy level down, or they start coming into a tailspin, you know, and
they may not want to say, we're going to talk about it now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so, first of all, you're saying step back,
Mm-hmm.
kind of pull back, like a bird's eye view. What's going on? So
right.
What's going on?
Mentally, yes.
Right. What's making them react
Mm-hmm.
like this? Always
Mm-hmm.
seek first to understand
yes.
where they come from.
Yes.
What's going on?
Yes.
And then probably the worst thing to say is, you need to calm down. And just say, so what you were just recommending is say, I need a few minutes here. Can I get back to you? Can we meet in the conference room in a couple minutes? What you're saying is pull back and don't attack back.
Right. Yeah.
That's key. But a lot of people want to, like, are you kidding me? What do you mean I did that?
Right.
That's how we want to go, because we don't understand what's going on, and we're not operating from that frame of mind when somebody's coming at us like that.
Exactly. Yes. Because that's what we've been conditioned all our lives through our own actions and watching others, maybe in our family, maybe in our friend circles, maybe at work circles, and seeing that's the norm, and that's how you protect yourself.
Right. The heart starts palpitating, and you feel the blood pressure rise, and it happens so quickly, it's a physiological response. It's happening like, I have to protect myself here. We want to go in protection mode automatically.
Yes.
So that's our body.
Exactly.
So we're going to, flight or fright, and we want to do something about it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of work to pull back.
Yes.
Be aware, but it could really work if we all did it instead of just escalating, because if we're going to escalate the negative energy, the whole thing's going to blow up.
Exactly. And then you get in a worse position than we were before as the problem started to erupt.
You're going to say things you don't really mean. People are going to remember it, and
yes.
It's a mess. Then you can't
yes.
push rewind and play it. Let's go back. I really didn't mean that. But when people are in that kind of situation, would you agree they say things that are really deep down thoughts about you that you didn't know they thought that way, but they're so angry they get it all, and you're like, you can't take those words back.
Right. Well, you get into one-upsmanship. Everyone's trying to one-up the other person, and
right.
that's how you get the escalation
right.
going.
Right.
So if you think about how we got into that situation of action, reaction, and really it's the first action is not an action, it's actually a reaction to something else that happens to that person. And you can follow that like a ripple in the pond. Okay, if someone else created that problem for that person, how did the first person get that? It was really from someone else that did that to that person, and so forth. And you can follow that, trace that back. But what we want to look at is how do we get into that action-reaction type of mode? That was from conditioning. So how do we change that? Because like you said, the adrenaline kicks in immediately. It is lightning fast, and your initial response is what you've been conditioned over many years to do. So you have to recondition yourself. by, again, going back to looking at who you are. Is this the person that I would choose to be? If I had a choice to be someone who would act in the moment or react in the moment, who would I choose? So if I chose the person who would take a moment and act consciously, choosing and creating the moment instead of reacting, then how do I make that happen for myself? How do I create myself to be that? So number one, it starts with awareness, then it starts with the choice, and then, like I talked about earlier, where the law of attraction even works with our thoughts. So if I have the thought about being that person who consciously chooses and creates the moment, then I would want to continue that thought pattern and read about it, learn about it, start doing some of the things that the books or the tapes or the CDs or the videos would talk about, and you start then. The more you think about it, the more you start gathering like opinions. So you start talking about it with other people, and you start realizing, yeah, other people want to do that as well. And oh yeah, you know what? Somebody says yoga helps them, and someone else says meditation helps them, and someone else says prayer helps them, and someone else says, this thought beliefs works, and so forth. And you start gathering like minds, and you start being more of that. So once you become that, you realize, so far down the road, a conflict happens, and now you are conditioned yourself over this time frame to be one who takes a mental step back before reacting. So it's not something that you can do. Well, you can actually, but it's something that most people don't do
Naturally,
immediately,
right?
By saying, okay, next time I have a conflict, I'm not going to react.
Right.
We could think that, but
they will today after listening to this. They'll try it.
Exactly.
You just try it and it works, and then you're kind of like, oh, that was interesting. So I understand first. Where were they coming from? Why were they upset?
Right.
I was late for work. Well, why was that upsetting to them that I was late for work? Because their expectation is that I'm on time.
Right.
And I think a lot of conflict happens because someone has expectations and they're not met.
Yes.
So if someone expects something of us and we don't meet it,
Mm-hmm.
naturally they're going to be upset. Same thing if someone else doesn't meet our expectations. We get frustrated, it builds up, and then boom, it's going to come out.
Yes. Exactly.
Whether it's a parent with a child,
right.
whether it's a child with a parent, it's understanding that sometimes we can't always meet everybody else's expectations.
Right. Right.
But looking back at that bird's eye view, seek first to understand.
Yes, very well said. Yes, and I've said before in our discussion group that expectations can sometimes be the root cause of a lot of conflict. Because, okay, well, I was expecting you to be this person, or I was expecting you to act this way, or not act this way, or say this or not say that. And because you didn't meet my internal expectations, I'm now frustrated with you. And the other person is wondering, like, what's going on? Like, why? And then you get the attack mode that's coming out, and then the reaction and so forth. So then it creates problems that way.
I think in a lot of, would you agree, breakdown in all kinds of relationships, whether it's at work, whether it's at home with your partner, with your spouse, with your children, it does come down to not communicating your expectations. Yes. I expected this and this and this, not as like a chief. I expected this, but I was a little disappointed today because I expected dinner to be ready when I got home. Not like, what's for dinner? Well, why isn't it ready? Right. You know what I mean? But just to say, when we go right to whatever, exactly. But you don't know what happened, that made dinner not be able to be ready, and then the expectations weren't met, and the whole thing blows up.
Right.
So, would you say that communication is really important in all those relationships to avoid conflict?
Absolutely. Sharing, communicating. It's an outcrop of love. So you want to understand, like you said, seek to understand. So you want to understand and you want to be understood. So the sharing of information.
We always want to be understood too. That's somebody out there is probably saying, I don't always want to seek to understand. I want to be understood. That's
right.
another thing that our ego wants, right?
Yes.
That's the ego.
Yes.
So the spirit side saying, I'm going to try to understand. The ego's like, I want to be understood. So there we go. The soul, the spirit, they're in conflict with the ego. And so the conflict can be internal a lot of times then.
Yes.
It's not always with other people.
Right.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. A lot of times our conflict starts within. I expected myself to be perfect in that situation, and what I showed forth was imperfection. And okay, so now I'm starting to beat myself up. I'm playing the tape over and over. I can't believe I said that or I did. Now, look, my ego is beating up on the self, and saying, why did you do that, or why didn't you do that? Uh, so a lot of times.
We're kind of going to take you off track a little bit and just tread, down a little bit of a different route. The self-conflict. Can we talk a little bit about addictions? We're seeing a huge problem in the area with teen addictions, heroin, overdoses. That's got to start with some kind of conflict. How do addictions fit into the self-conflict, would you say?
Yes, we're stepping outside of my comfort zone here.
But it's a conflict, but it's an internal conflict.
It is an internal conflict.
Between wanting to be happy in that moment,
right?
That brief moment.
Well, I think the addiction, and maybe you might have a different opinion on this, but I think the addiction has to do with the ego trying to escape who you are, and perhaps the ego is trying not to be or do something that is uncomfortable, and so an addiction is an easy out. Although from the outside we see it
doesn't look easy.
Exactly. From the outside we're looking at the addiction saying that's got to be the worst of all possible choices. But from within the addiction, I'm thinking that it looks to me to be something that is number one. It eventually becomes physiological, that the body craves that. But to get to that point, before it becomes a craving, a physical craving, there is an escapism component to it. Maybe not the entire part, but certainly a portion of it. So
because then internally that person's not happy.
Yes.
So if someone's not happy,
right,
then internally they are wanting to escape.
Yes.
Escape feeling
pain, escape feeling lonely, sadness, any negative emotion that might be overwhelming.
So that's an internal conflict.
Yes.
And what can somebody do with that kind of conflict? So again, first you have to be aware that you have an issue with the conflict.
Yes.
And then is it the same circumstances?
And then it would be the same situation where the person would be aware and then seek change or make a choice of who they would be, and then facilitate in that direction. However, with addiction, the physical addiction takes over the mind. So logic is out the window, and the only choice is the addiction. So all logic goes out the window.
And they need that, and that's when they need somebody to reach out their hand, but they've got to grab back on.
Exactly.
They've got to be ready for the change, for help. And then
they have to be willing and want to make the change. And even with that, if you got all those things together, there'll still be the ups and downs. The on the wagon and off the wagon type things are very common that you hear about.
And isn't it interesting that a lot of people who have addictions who are able to heal them, usually it's because, like you said, they remembered who they are and who they are connecting to the divine.
Yes.
Because a lot of people are able to pull out of addiction because they remember who they are and they become one again with God. Their faith grows stronger.
Yes.
The people that I've seen that have been able to pull out successfully have reconnected themselves to the world.
Yes.
And rose outside of their ego.
Yes.
And that's where the healing occurs.
Exactly. Now, and that steps us back to what we were talking about with triune being, where it's body, mind, spirit. Where you
Mind, body, spirit.
mind,
Either
body,
way.
spirit. There you go. Hey, you know it. What a
That's just
coincidence.
that. What a coincidence. So we named that place.
So with the triune being, mind, body, spirit, I'll say it in that order, is you hear about people centering themselves and being one with themselves or connecting, reconnecting. I think that's reconnecting.
Reconnect. How about that?
Renew and reward. So with reconnecting the mind, body, spirit, you're centering yourself, and AA is big with the 12-step program and bringing religion into it, and prayer and centering yourself and getting to know who you are. So when your mind and your body and your spirit are one, or they're connected, which quite often happens through a lot of self looking into yourself and meditation, self-discovery, all those things. Then you're more power. You have that more internal power to take on whatever problems you have, and that's, I believe, where a lot of people going through AA or other addiction programs end up, is more centered of who they are and more understanding and forgiving of themselves, and able to tap that power source to confront their addiction and overpower it.
So even though I took you off track there with addiction, that's a conflict. It sounds like it actually had almost the same resolution as what you said for just the conflict with the boss and the employee.
Right.
Step back, go within, decide who you are. Why are you reacting? So the addict is, why am I reacting? And when we have to look at ourselves, that's a little scary sometimes.
Yes.
Because you do beat yourself up. You look ugly. You're not physically ugly, but there's an ugliness there, and you've hurt yourself. You've hurt other people, and it's hard to rise above that. But it just in everyday relationships that can fall apart, they can look ugly too.
Yes.
And so the healing seems like there's an underlying theme where it's a self-discovery. It is a reconnection with who we are, but going all the way back to, you have to know who you are,
right,
in order to move forward in conflict, in life, in anything. And know who you are by knowing who you're not. That's not me. I'm not a failure.
Right.
I'm not going to fail. That's not who I am. I'm going to get back on the horse. I'm going to push forward, and that's my me.
Right.
That's not who you are. But what's the be, do, have that
Correct.
we talk about?
Yes.
It's who you want. So when you're trying to come out of some kind of conflict,
you want to be, first be that you want to be. So the way manifestation works is, if you want to have something, you can't just you don't just do something to have it, because doing stems from being. So once you decide who you are and you create yourself to be that, then doing naturally stems from being. So once you be that, you choose to be that, you are that person who does those things, and now you're doing those things, and then you would naturally have those things. So that's the be, do, have process. A lot of people think, well, I can't have love until I'm in love with somebody. So how do you turn that around? Well, if you start out being a loving person, then you will naturally do things that are loving and giving to other people. And then once you're doing that, you will naturally attract someone else who wants to share in that love on a more continual basis with you. And that's when you'll have someone in your relationship, in your life, that you love and who loves you.
So being is like the law of attraction. So when you be, you attract.
Exactly. It is.
Okay.
It is.
Be the change.
Good
That's
example.
another one. Be the change. Was that Gandhi who did
yes.
that? Or?
Be the change you want to see in the world. Yes.
Be the change. So you want more love, be more loving.
Right.
You want people to give to you, be more giving.
Exactly.
You want to be nicer, You want other people to be nicer, so you can use it in conflict. My boss is
Yes.
always nasty that, so if you change how you react to them,
Mhm.
or not even react, how you act toward them,
Exactly.
then they're suddenly going to be nicer to you.
You will see over time their habits, their interaction with you will start to morph, metamorph to a more kinder, gentler interaction. So if there's some people who typically have rough edges around people, but you start to be more kind and loving towards that person, you will find that they may not change with anyone else, but your personal interaction with them will tend to be softer.
Okay.
I've seen that happen. I've experienced that. It does work.
So be nice, and you get nice back. Is that what you're saying?
Usually how it works.
Put out something. Even so, if somebody is a pain in your neck and you're complaining and moaning about them all the time, that's what you're going to keep getting back, right?
Exactly,
Because
yes.
what you're being is a complainer.
Right.
So they're only going to complain to you.
Right.
If you're just complaining, even if you're just complaining to yourself, even if you
It's
just keep it all here.
Exactly. It's the law of attraction working. So like energies attract. So if you're complaining even just to yourself, you're going to pick up and attract others who will be complainers as well. So you'll end up with this group of complainers that tend to hang out, and we've probably all seen that at work or in neighborhoods or wherever. People that are talking about everyone else and saying how everyone else is wrong and so forth.
But what would they do if they didn't complain? That's like that's who they are, right? That's how they define themselves.
Exactly.
If you tell someone they can no longer complain,
and
they won't know how to even act.
And we wouldn't tell them that because.
Well, I mean, you don't tell them, but I'm just
sure.
saying, okay, if you just did an experiment, say,
Yeah.
okay, all of you, I want you for 24 hours not to complain, don't have any drama, don't talk negatively about anybody.
So did you do it? I think you did that.
I had somebody who I
Okay.
said, don't be talking the drama, and they struggled with what to say.
Right.
They didn't know how to communicate.
Yeah. So it was a big awareness for any individual that doesn't realize that they're doing that, and so now it's an awareness of catching themselves of, okay, well that's normally how I act. So now they're starting to do this introspection of who am I? Who do I choose to be? Do I want to go back to being that person?
Well, that's more comfortable. So
it is.
Most people
because
will go back
yeah.
because that's their comfort zone.
Exactly.
This over here is not comfortable.
Right, because it's new. Yes.
It's new. It's not comfortable. It may not even be fun.
Right.
Some people like that drama. They like to stir the pot.
Yes.
There's some family,
yes.
they like to stir the pot and get everybody riled up. Then they hang the phone up and they're like, oh, let's see what happens now.
Right.
People thrive on that.
Yes.
And that's.
There's an energy around that you can feed off of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're going to change that part of the world. There's
Well,
people, but if any of them want to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it all comes from the one. The same thing.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Phil, how's that working for you?
Right.
Well, if they're stuck in drama, I'm like, how's that working for you?
Right.
Because what you're putting out, you're going to keep getting back.
Exactly. Yes.
And we don't realize that it's, like you said
Mm-hmm.
before, that every attack is a reaction to something. So
Right.
if you're putting out the negativity and the drama, then they're going to react to what you're putting out, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just going to keep that energy, like you should,
Right.
escalating in a negative way.
Yes. So another thing you could do is look at in the way of reconditioning yourself. When you start with having the internal discussion going on, you're starting to beat yourself up, or you're replaying the tape of what happened earlier with another individual and that conflict. Do the same thing, conditioning yourself to say, okay, well, let me step back from that instant replay that I'm doing, that tape I'm playing in my head. Or let me step back a moment from beating myself up, and let me just focus on my breathing for a moment. This is not necessarily meditation, although people will frequently use this in the start of meditation. But if you're not one who wants to meditate or doesn't know how, or doesn't feel to have the time to meditate, just focus on your breath for a moment. And if you're watching this at home, you can do this even while we're talking here or after the tape's done. Just give yourself about 1 minute, 2 minutes of just listening to your own breath. And notice difference in your energy level from before you started focusing on your breath to after that 1 or 2 minutes, and see how more relaxed you are, and see if the tape has slowed down and or even stopped from replaying itself. And if you just send yourself love during that time, just send yourself acceptance and believe in yourself in that 1 or 2 minutes, the energy level goes down and you're more connected, you're more in yourself. It's another way of conditioning. And if you do that frequently, then in the heat of the moment, you might be more apt to connect with that part of yourself that says, all right, I'm no longer the person who reacts. But again, it's going back to reconditioning.
I was at a seminar last week, and the man who spoke was a professional interrogator, and he teaches the other side of it, how to be interrogated and how to interrogate. Wait, is that the same thing? How to be interrogated if someone's interrogating you.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about the breath technique that they teach even the Navy SEALs, and it was called the 4-breath hold or something. So you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 4, and you exhale for a count of 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that holding is when your heart's going like this. When you hold your breath, it slows your heart down. So you have to do it very, very slowly, and that's a way that I've heard, a lot of people involve breath for meditation.
Mm-hmm.
It's breathing is so important because we breathe from up here, and we don't take deep breaths from down here all day long. We don't breathe that way.
Right.
So when you're in conflict, then you start all that shallow breathing. It's just it's not going to enable your brain to think clearly if you're not getting that oxygen. Yes. You only think, what am I supposed to do? What was I supposed to say? What? And you boom, 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 and it just keeps mounting up. And so conflict has a physical effect on your body.
Yes, and it's also good for pain management too.
Yeah, sure.
You can help yourself reduce the pain sensations by focusing on your breath and getting centered. Yeah.
Sometimes if I feel a headache coming on, I'll just say, oh no, this isn't going to happen. I'll take a couple of deep breaths, and just the oxygen, you can heal your own body with that. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Breathing, very important. Never stop.
We like that. So if we're attracting, so law of attraction, let's talk about this personally now. So what happens energetically? Well, we talked about internally. What happened internally? All attacks are in response. So that's what's going on internally. And we talked about how you can monitor and keep that in check by reconditioning yourself. So let's talk for a moment about what happened energetically to two people in conflict with each other. So it's the same here, the law of attraction, energies attract. So how does that person who is attacking choose you over someone else to attack? And this is a very difficult concept for people who are in the victim mode, where they say, no, I didn't bring this person on. I didn't bring him, and I certainly didn't attract him because I pray and I meditate, or I do all these loving, giving things. So why would anything negative ever happen to me? And these things do happen to bad things do happen to good people, and this is things we see on the news all the time, and in our own life experience, all of us have had some negative things happen, and we all believe ourselves to be good people. But let's step down from that and just talk about hot button issues instead, which is then easier to apply that concept to a grander concept. So we all have our hot button issues. We all have something that triggers our emotion, and it's based on something that happened to us, earlier in life, and now we're reliving that moment when somebody comes up and denies us whatever it is we want, or says no, or does something that comes in late, like you said, something that triggers our hot button. So our hot button issues. Well, let me ask you, why do you think that happens? What creates someone's hot button? If they're intelligent people and they know this is a hot button, why would it still get them emotionally riled?
At some point, it hurt them. Mm-hmm. There was a hurt around that situation that's coming back to the surface, and their emotions are kicking in.
Exactly.
because of that.
Yes. And emotions are um, very strong energies within us. And some say that the emotions are the spirit, or I'm sorry, emotions are the language of the soul. And the reason why some will say that is because your emotional energy is many times stronger than your thought energy. It has a much more powerful attractive ability, much more powerful creating ability. So if there's something in your life that you want to create or something that you want to attract, use your emotions or mimic your or recreate your emotions. So if you want more joy in your life, create joy in the moment. Think happy thoughts. Think back to something that really made you happy. Actually, remember that happiness in that moment and recreate it in yourself, and you'll feel your energy level going up. You can maybe remember something that was very funny, and actually start to giggle and laugh, and even if it's a little bit forced, start trying to recreate that. And the more often you do that, the more you will attract more happiness into your life, and the more you, and partly because you're what we call faking it until you're making it. You're recreating that artificially, but then you start liking that, and you start naturally creating that for yourself, and then you want to share that with others. So everyone wants to share, and that's how you start then attracting it into your life. So emotions are very key triggers. So this helps us resolve the reason why we have these buttons is exactly what you said. Something happened. We're reliving that moment, even though it might have been a different person, a different situation. But in that instant, that split second, we're reliving that, and we create that emotional outburst. So the energetic reason why that happens, or the spiritual reason, is that this is an issue we have not yet resolved. And if we haven't resolved it, we haven't come to full terms with it, then our spirit is saying, you still have to work on that. And we're going to help you remember that that's something that you're still working on. And we're going to put it out there in front of your face. So
those are going to keep showing up
exactly
in your life. So if you're constantly getting frustrated about the same thing,
right.
It's there because it's trying to teach you a lesson, to help you
in
resolve
part,
it.
Exactly. Yes, to help you, number one, like you said earlier, be aware.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is constantly late, that really riles you, you're going to see lateness around you for the rest of your life until you resolve your issue with others being late. It started when you were late somewhere and someone was constantly beating you up for being late. Now that is a trigger to you, like, I will never be late. I'm always a half hour early. If I'm not 10 minutes early, I'm late. And that people that live that life. So so life is, or your spirit is saying, okay, we're going to continue to attract this and put it right in front of you until such a time where you become aware that this is detrimental to you, not to the other person who's late, but this is a problem that you have to deal with because there will always be late people. So does it serve you to be upset about someone else being late? Is this benefiting you? And if the answer is no, it doesn't really benefit me because my stress level goes up, my anger goes up, my relationship deteriorates with that person, our business, suffers because of not because of they're late, but because of our relationship deteriorating, and the work that we're trying to do together is now affected, or my relationship with my significant other or my family member or my friend is deteriorating because of that. Then maybe I can't change them, but perhaps I should look at changing how I react to that. So that is your soul bringing this into your forefront and says, okay, do you want to deal with this? You don't have to, because it's going to continue to come to you whether you want it or not. So
Who's
What do you
doing
want?
that? Who's making
You're,
it come to us? Just
well, the law of attraction, number one.
okay.
Because it's an emotional, and I said like our emotions are our strongest creators. Part of the strongest part of us that creates. So we get an emotional reaction to someone being late, and therefore that emotion, that vibration we're putting out, that energy, is attracting others to come late, and or whatever the trigger is. But once we start creating and attracting that to us, to our awareness, uh, that could be a reminder to us to say, okay, maybe it's time I relook at this situation, and maybe what would life be like if I didn't get upset by someone being late? And then you start thinking about it. If you meditate on it, or if you just sit quietly, or just ask yourself these questions, then you can do the things we talked about. If you choose to change yourself around that particular trigger, then you can choose to change yourself and say, okay, well, next time someone comes late, with the conditioning doing of the breathing and thinking about relaxing around this issue, see what happens, and of course, then there will be someone coming in late again, and that's your choice every time to say, okay, well, maybe if I just give myself a few breaths, and then choose to act, consciously creating that moment as opposed to reacting. Let me just see what would happen. How would things be different? How would our relationship be different? How would my stress level be different? How would my body anxiety and immune system be affected, and so forth? So all those things could improve. So now, if you tend to go down that road, you choose to go down that road, and you eventually relieve yourself of that being a trigger, what will happen is that next late person being late will be a benign event to you. It will mean nothing. That's when you know you've released that trigger. And then from there you can choose to act and say, okay, well, if this is one of my employees, then it might be a disciplinary problem. If this is a friend or a family, or relationship, I'll know to compensate for it, or do something different, or whatever it is. But I won't. But I will honor myself first and say, okay, for me, it's better if I'm at peace with the situation and loving myself for growing and being accepting and loving and forgiving. And it goes back to your what you mentioned about expectation. If I release that expectation, that will improve our relationship, because now the person's coming late and they're not expecting you to be stressed. Well, they're probably expecting you to be stressed. They'll be, delighted when they see you're not, and that you're just as loving and accepting of them then than you would at any other time. And how would that improve the relationship?
So that's what we should strive for, is the harmony in relationship, balance,
Yes.
so that it's not out of balance with the positive and negative. Now, you said something a little while ago, which a lot of people, struggle with, but why do bad things happen to good people? Awful, terrible things happen to good people. We're not making, say, abuse happen. A child is not asking for abuse to happen, physical abuse. So what's that all about?
This gets into a very deep concept, which, first of all, on the physical level, no one wants abuse. No one wants to create abuse. No one wants to attract abuse. On a physical level, it's a terrible thing, and we strive to end that. On a physical level, we want to help those that are abused and console and stop the abuser. And all these things are on the physical level that we create to try and mediate or intervene and stop those type of situations. So no one is consciously aware of attracting, and no one tries to make this happen to learn any lessons. When you think about the soul coming in and out of the body, when the soul incarnates, comes in this lifetime, this is a life that it's of its choosing, and at some point the soul will leave the body. So if you're one who believes in reincarnation, where a soul will come in, incarnate into a life, and then live that life, however long it is, and leave, and then at some point back into another physical life, reincarnation explained, then if you're looking at multiple lives over eons of time, how many different deaths were there? So does each soul choose to have a death in its sleep where it's comfortable and relaxed with everyone around them? Obviously, looking at history, that doesn't happen. So then death becomes another experience, as is every other part of life. So if the soul knows coming into life that at some point there's going to be what we call a death experience, then that would be something that it could choose to create, as well as it created other, or co-created, I should say. It's more of a co-creation. Co-create other experiences within the life. So there is in each interaction there's a co-creation. So this becomes again a very deep topic here. So I want to be careful with it. But you and I are co-creating this situation, and it's a loving interaction of helping each other. And normally that is all of our experiences. When the soul is looking at how do you help others, there's, for example, one of the people I know had talked about when they had got a message from their spirit guide on what their parent, who was addicted to alcohol, had gone through. So the parent had passed on, and was then communicated a message back saying, "Thank you for being my offspring, my child. During that time, it taught me how to help others when I come back into the next life, how to help others who are going through addiction. I needed to experience being an addict in order to be able in my next life to help others." Does that make sense? So in that situation, then the child living with an alcoholic parent, going through abuse and seeing the family degrade, so to speak, makes it difficult to understand from our physical point, like, why would someone choose that? And it's a very loving experience when you look at it from a spiritual side, from the spirit, both souls talking to each other, saying, I chose to be here with you to support you during that life, to help you help others in the next life. So for those who are believing in reincarnation, that would help.
It kind of makes it easier to digest that whole concept if you say, well, you chose this because, and it's good because next time, you'll learn this, you'll feel love. But for those who don't believe in reincarnation, it stinks.
It does.
It's an awful life, and you're like, that's the hand that you were dealt, and you got to put up with it, and that's it. And you either rise above it.
Now that person who, yeah, exactly. That person who was who grew up in that family is a healer and is a very compassionate person, and is loving and giving and understanding of those who are going through addiction, and is helping others through addiction.
So just maybe for those who don't believe in reincarnation, may just be that person had to learn that lesson to help other people.
Right. So out of this, you might say, well, still that was a terrible life, and you look at all the lives throughout our history, and you say, all these people that have come into these lives, how could they possibly have chosen this? Well, maybe it wasn't chosen in incarnating, but it was something that they're accepting and dealing with and making the best of it as they're going through it. So there's no easy answer for us to grapple with, and one answer that will say this answers everything and solves everything extends back to your belief system. Well, if I choose not to believe that is happening, then go with a response that is, or an explanation that that fits within your belief system, and says, okay, well, that explains why, that they're just bad people. And if that is within your belief system and that works for you, then that's fine. But there's, you talk with a psychologist and you will get that belief system's explanation of what happened. You talk with someone who's in the law enforcement side, and you'll get an explanation that fits within that belief system and says, well, this is what happens, and this is how we deal with it, and this is why it happened. And you may talk with someone in another religion, and they will explain from their perspective. So you gravitate to what belief system works for you and that you're comfortable with, and that's fine. Either way, we're not going to change that scenario. It's going to be what it is, and those souls will get out of it what they get out of it, and they go into it for the reason they go into it. Not to say that what one person says or believes is going to affect or change that. So it's more going to affect how we think of it and how we feel about ourselves when we look at that situation. So do we say, okay, well, that person just accepted it and therefore I don't have to do anything with it, or do we feel compassion and say, well, how can I help that person? Even though they, whether or not they chose to do it consciously or spiritually, doesn't matter. How do I want to help that, or how do I participate in making it better?
So if we don't believe in reincarnation and we know that bad things happen, that's just life.
Yes. And that will always happen.
And
yes.
there's a lesson in it in this life for somebody, maybe who that situation touches, but the devastation, the earthquakes, the tornadoes, things that happen that we think are 9/11 are huge. Why did all those people perish?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a lesson for the whole? Was there a lesson for their families? It's not an easy thing to get our ego minds around, and then that's when you really do have to pull back and say, okay, what do I believe?
And what I would urge is not focusing on why is it happening, and why is God allowing this to happen, but what can I do to either help that situation or help in my understanding of who I am. Maybe I can't help that situation, but maybe I can still use that compassion, that love, and that understanding to help others, maybe similar situation, more closer to me, or just perhaps comfort, aid, money, whatever it is that fits within your belief system of who you are. And but it always, you can take that and look internally and say, okay, well, who am I in relationship to that?
Because that's the conflict that's caused from the outside too.
Right.
So circling back to our whole, I've gotten you off track a lot tonight from what you wanted to talk about, but it's still that's conflict. Anything that is difficulty in understanding the world and what's happening, that internal conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And some people react one way, other people get depressed, other people stir it up and they make the drama, and we all react differently to external conflict that's going on in the world.
Right.
Depending on who we are and what our egos are saying.
So exactly, and so going back to what we were talking about, what happens energetically here, and we talked about the law of attraction. The same chart that I showed you, where the energy on this side and frequency on the bottom. If we have a trigger, and let's say if this is my chart here, and my energy shoots up here. When that trigger gets pulled, if I were to be working on my breathing and my meditation or my focus of changing who I am, I will notice over time as that trigger happens, that energy and that frequency goes down. So now over time, eventually it will be a flat line, it will be a benign event, and that would be what I would strive for, is more harmony and peace in that moment, as opposed to an energetic spike of anger or discord or stress or tension, which eventually is usually harmful to the relationship of the person that you're trying to interact with.
And then there's this whole thing about the collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading something, and I can't remember who said it or what kind of test was done, but for I think it was the day that 9/11 happened, there's this energetic field that's measured, that the Earth measures or something. I don't remember what it's about, but it's something that is measured all the time. And there was this energetic spike the day of 9/11. And the interpretation of this speaker, whoever it was that the emotions of everyone was so high that day. But it was also, it was vibrating of love for those people and their families and the care and all, that it actually energetically changed something in the Earth's pattern. So then we talk about this collective consciousness, and we all got the concept that we are all one, no matter what religion you are. We are all one. We all bleed red. Be kind. But it's hard to do that when there are people who believe differently, who are attacking your children and attacking you personally at work, or attacking you as a nation. Mm-hmm. It's not easy.
No, it's not, because we're conditioned to react. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what we were talking about all evening, which is we're conditioned to react. And going to tie these two things together of what happens to us personally in a relationship and what happens on an international level. I was joking with you earlier before taping about I should have labeled this as how do you rule the world from the couch? And the same energetic system applies to international, how you and I and anyone else would apply this energetic pattern towards international affairs. So when you look at something on TV, the more you watch about that news event, the more you get, and we all tend to pick a side. And we all tend to say, well, how can that side be doing it that side? That's wrong. We go into judgment, and then we go into pulling for the other side. And that's when our energy is participating in, and when you say we're all one, and if you believe that, literally that we are all one, then anything I do affects what's going on anywhere else in the world. It's what some people call the butterfly effect. So if I say, okay, well, instead of me looking at this conflict, international conflict, and saying, I'm hoping this person or this side wins versus this side, and instead of saying I just hope they stop warring, what you want to do is send them love to both sides, and love is a great neutralizer of energies. It helps bring energies more into harmony and peace. So the more I send love to both sides, the less I am participating in the conflict from my couch, from wherever I am in the world. So, and I like to refer to a time when Mother Teresa was asked, would you join us in a march against the war? And she said, no, I will not be there. And if you start thinking, like, why would Mother Teresa not be on a march against war? It's because she knows that she would be participating in picking a side. She said, if you hold a march for peace, I will be there. So again, she's reiterating about how love and peace an aspect of love, helps neutralize those energies, conflict, and brings them into harmony. So if you were to march against war, then you're automatically setting up a equal and opposite force. So like Einstein said, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if I were to set up an action of stop the war, there are going to be the faction of those saying continue the war, because they are for a particular side that they will see win. So if I was to say then instead, I send you love, you're not going to get the opposite reaction of we send you hate. It's going to be the two sides are still trying to win. They're going back to what we had talked about before of the action, the reaction, one-upsmanship, trying to win. So love is more of a neutralizer.
Love your enemy. We heard that
There's
before.
There's a
we heard that,
concept.
Bear. We heard that somewhere before.
Going back to one person who can influence many through love and through nonviolence.
It's not easy.
It wasn't easy for any of them, but it's still a better alternative. It's still possible. It's still proven, and it's still a better alternative to conflict, even if it's just interpersonal conflict or even internal conflict.
So it's pretty hard to love your attacker.
Yes, because again, our ego jumps in and says, "Well, we want to win, and we want to
harm that person."
Sure.
There has to come in a protection of self-defense, but.
And that's part of self-love too, is protecting yourself. But we've heard these distant stories of people giving up their life for others. We're in the Catholic religion. Jesus giving up his life for all those coming after. But it can be done. It has been done. Not to say that should be done in any situation, but it is an option to choose if you are in a creative mindset of to create the moment as opposed to reacting. So in our first reaction is always self-preservation. There's nothing wrong with that.
And I actually know someone who was being attacked, and she kind of went within, and she just looked at the person and said, "Jesus loves you. I want you to know that Jesus loves you." And I think it must have thrown him totally off, and she found out later that she was one of the first people that he didn't seriously injure and let her go. But wow. it could have been because that's what she was choosing to do. I mean, she was sending love to someone attacking her.
Yeah, there's a great example.
Yeah.
And that's a rare event because few of us are so self-present in the moment to be able to know who we are in that moment, to be able to have that pull and that inner strength and create the moment as you want it to be as opposed to reacting, which is probably what that attacker was used to, people reacting, and he was conditioned. He knows how to handle a reaction, and which would be a continuum of the escalation of the violence. Wow.
You diffused it.
Yes.
With love.
Perfect. Yeah.
With love.
I love that.
Love it.
I love it.
You love it.
So that would be how you rule the world from your couch.
From your couch. Sit back and send love to
love, peace.
Both sides. Love, peace, light.
See, and vision peace. See peace. Send love. Pray for peace. Pray for both the well-being of both sides. Pray for all those that are there. And always positive, always in the moment, always with love. And that will help you as well as help others around you, as well as help possibly settle the conflict, certainly trying to diffuse it. So then the question is, well, yeah, but I'm only one person. Can I do that? Can I really make an effect? I've been praying for peace and nothing's happening over there. When enough of us participate in that, we talk about the energy spike of what happened in India, where enough people started thinking about that and physically manifested a being who came through and said, I will be, choose to be that leader for the group. And the same thing can happen. Enough people pray for peace as opposed to praying to stop the war or praying for one side to win or choosing, to help with one side versus another. It's right now, it's a reflection of who we are as one, as opposed to a definition of who they are versus who I am. Does that make sense?
So pull back, pray for both sides. Don't pick or choose, because that's what we naturally want to do. And for one side, but that's a whole different way to rule the world from your couch.
Yes, it is. It's a different mindset.
Don't feed into the drama.
Yes. Interpersonally, relationships as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you're seeing two family members or two friends feuding,
send them love.
Send them love. Send them peace. See them as loving together. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you have for us? Is that pretty much it?
That was it. That's
a lot.
That is a lot. I thought it was going to be a big.
I think we talked about a lot of stuff, Lou. A lot of stuff, but a lot of good tips. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Well, question I have on manifesting. Can you basically summarize that one more time?
The be do have part.
Be do have.
Be do have.
Yeah.
That's not an easy concept to remember.
Yeah, because we're conditioned to, well, if I want to have something, I have to do this to have it. I've got to have the money to buy the car. So, how can I just have it by being, in my mind, a car owner? But really, it starts with in your mind being a car owner. So, or being an owner of a new car, because you wouldn't at any point have anything you had without that thought saying, I will be the owner of that, or I will be the doer of that, or I'm someone who does that type of thing. So you're always starting with that concept of being that. You just don't put it together. A lot of people don't realize the actual connections there. So if there's something you got at, and something that's out there that's elusive, there's probably a conflict in your mind of saying, I want that, I'm choosing that, I'm trying to go for it, but I just can't get it. And when you have that concept in your mind that where you're vacillating between I want it and I can't get it, what's winning is the fact that you're not seeing it there in front of you. You're not seeing yourself as the owner, because you're seeing yourself as not owning it or not having it. And that's what's winning in your mind. So you have to get mentally past that and say, okay, I am the owner of that car. So you have to start there. And that is, again, changing the conditioning of your mind, of getting past the fact that I don't own a car. So you start putting up pictures of our minds work great visually. So put pictures up, maybe a dream board, as we were talking about with Lisa, losing weight.
Did you see her? You didn't see her dream board yet, right?
No, I didn't get to see that yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
she did a great job.
Oh, good. Having a dream board of the car you wanted, the color you want, maybe put a picture of yourself next to the car. Put on there about you owning the car, and start. So
you're conditioning your mind.
You're trying to condition your mind to say,
think that you have it, to trick it.
It's not a trick. It's a change of beliefs.
Okay.
Is what you're doing. You're not trying to trick, because your mind won't fall for the trick.
Okay.
But your mind will voluntarily recondition itself.
Okay.
And we do that all the time by changing our beliefs about something.
And it's
or about
more negative. More often we're saying, I can't do that, I'll never have that. So it's acting. Would you say acting as if you have it? Or just conditioning as reminders that it's possible?
Right, exactly. First going inside with the mental belief system that I can be the owner of a car. And so putting reminders up around yourself of saying, I own that car, I have that car, I am that car owner. Always positive, always in the present moment, and has nothing to do with what your desire is. You're stating a fact yourself, I am that. So once you start doing that, you put it on your computer screen, you have it up on reminders on the mirror, you have these reminders around wherever you frequent saying, I am that. And then you start working towards that unconditional, or I should say, a lot of times it happens without you realizing you're doing it, that you start attracting then. As you start changing your vibration as someone who is that, you're being that, you start changing your vibration and attracting to you things that are, first you kind of see signs. You start thinking, oh wow, what a coincidence, I'm seeing that car everywhere now. And you start seeing, attracting conversations around you about someone else getting a new car, and this is how they did it. And you start realizing, oh wow, yeah, maybe I'm starting to get signs that I'm closer to my new car. And you start looking at the ads a little closer. Maybe you start visiting the car lot.
Is this the do part? Are we in the do part
now? We're into the do part without realizing I'm traveling between be to do.
Okay.
And now you start talking with the salesperson, and you start talking with others who own the car. How do you like that? Oh yeah, we love this car. Yeah, I think it's a great car. And now all of a sudden you're realizing this car isn't as far out of my reach as I thought it was, because the sales rep said I could do this and that to get the car, and I realize now my finances aren't as bad as I thought they were. And there's other options. There's a used version, a couple of years older, as a stepping stone maybe to a new car, and so forth. And so you start getting yourself from be to do to have, and that's the concept. And it works universally on anything, but you have to be that first in your mind in order to do those things that person does, or a person who is that would do, and then you will have what it is you're looking for. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. It does. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions from the studio audience or chat room?
Anything online? No questions online. Okay. So
any other clarifications, or
we're good. It's 9 o'clock. So
all right,
we sign off. So we do these discussions every Wednesday from 7 to 9 Eastern time, and it goes between Reverend Louis Mander, author of his first book.
That's correct.
Can you
First one
really
published.
quick let them know how they can find it?
It's called Spirit's Course in Creating, and it was designed to be a modern version of Course in Miracles. So it's available on Balboa Press, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. It's available in ebook, softcover, and hardcover.
Awesome. So
And
congratulations.
at R3 Wellness as well.
We do have it here. So please visit our website for any future workshops if you're in the area, or online. We're broadcasting a new program this Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time called Today's Women's Survival Tips. And we will feature an anxiety specialist and our life coach. And we're going to give some tips for women to navigate through the stresses of life, to achieve balance, and more. So if you can tune in, please visit our website, r3wellnesscenter.com, or our Facebook page, facebook.com/r3wellness. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.